Welcome to the Canarian International Meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Kathleen and I'm an alcoholic serving as your secretary today.
My name is Anna J and I'm an alcoholic serving as your secretary today. Please join us in a few moments silence to remember the still suffering alcoholic both inside and outside of the meeting.
The preamble will be shared on the screen and Kathy is reading it.
Women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. AA has no dues or fees. It is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. A very warm welcome goes out to any newcomers or anyone returning to Alcoholics Anonymous.
Chat. The chat is now disabled until the end of the meeting, except for the meeting host. If you feel the meeting security is at risk at any time during the meeting, please private message one of the co-hosts so they can check it out.
And this evening we have Julie, and I had the pleasure of meeting Julie face to face last week, and she's an absolute lady, and I look forward to hearing your story. You're asked to unmute there, Julie. There you go. It's all yours. You have 40 to 50 minutes or as much time as you need.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to share this evening at the meeting, and thank you for asking me. It's always a pleasure to share. When I heard it was this length of me sharing time, I did swallow a bit hard because I thought, crikey, how am I going to fill all those minutes? But it's often incredibly easy to fill those minutes when you get going and you start thinking where you've been and how it's worked out for you just for today. So my name's Julie and I'm an alcoholic, and my sobriety date is the 14th of November 1994, and that's when I had my first sober day. And that seems, I was just thinking before I went online, those years have gone by incredibly quickly in a blink of an eye. And it's quite scary, really, because I'm not likely to see another 30 years. But that's okay, because what's really mattered to me during all of my journey, and what I've been really, although I say it myself, very good at, is just keeping it in the day. And I think that has helped me tremendously, just to allow myself to feel. It's allowed myself to have good days, bad days, and it's allowed myself, or it's helped me get to this stage in my sobriety. And it's just another day. So I was born in Derbyshire, and I'm the youngest of 3 children. My brother and sister, there's 18 months between them, and there's 10 years gap between me. So I was almost like an only child, really. My sister, we came to live in Bath when I was 7, or we lived in a little village just outside, actually, but or moved. And my sister stayed in Derbyshire, in Derby, just outside. She went to the art college with my auntie Ginny. So it's my brother and me, mum and dad. And over the years, I've heard so many shares of different upbringings. Mine was absolutely idyllic, and it was full of love and full of music. My mum and dad met through music. My mum was a grade 8 pianist, and my dad had a jazz band. He was a saxophonist, and he was 9 years older than my mum. And he actually met my mum when she was 15. And they got married when she was 21. And shortly after that, my sister was born, and then my brother, and then I came along later. So we moved here, and I was 7, and I thought about that. I mean, I settled in to the little village school. It was lovely. I made friends. I was very sporty. I was always very connected with friendships. Friendships have always been important to me. And especially when I first moved here, I can remember my friend, who is still my friend today, this is 60 years on, we had the same prams. I'll never forget it. She had the same pram as me, and my pram was 14 years old, and so was hers. And my accent, of course, from the Midlands was very different from the Somerset accent. So, but we made friends, and she's still my friend today, which is wonderful. So at that stage in my life, everything was lovely. I'm an animal lover. We had various animals that I tended to with my dad. My dad was a beekeeper, and then I started dancing. I started dancing when I was about 9, and I can remember my mum wouldn't get me any shoes because she knew that I'd get fed up, or thought I would. I was very good at starting things and not finishing, but I didn't get fed up of dancing, and I did actually at 12 audition for the Royal Ballet School, and I did get in. I could have gone to the Royal Ballet School. And I often think, would my life have been different if I'd have gone there? And I don't think so. I don't think it would. But the thought of leaving home, I was such a home bird, was just crippling. I used to go and have sleepovers. If I was away longer than 2 nights, I used to get so homesick. I just couldn't leave home. And I don't think really my mum, what would I have done with my daughter? Would I have made her go to the Royal Ballet School? And no, I wouldn't have done. So I stayed at home, and I had a red setter instead. So my sort of teenage years were, I suppose, happy. My friends used to be at my house when I wasn't. You know, my parents were so lovely. Our house was always full of music, all kinds of music. I love all kinds of music. But what I did notice was that if there was the slightest fallout, or if I felt any exclusion whatsoever, it would really hit me hard. And my friend Lizzie, the one I've mentioned, I felt when we went to senior school one day, I don't know what happened. I felt that she was going off, and I was so upset and so hurt. I ran away from school, and I ran across the fields, and I ran home, and I've thought about that a lot. It was such a silly thing, but to me it was such a big thing. And I was very imaginative as a child. My dancing took me in my head, I would dance and dance and dance. And again, I would dance to an unhealthy limit, not twice a week, but every single day. Every single day I would dance, not just for half an hour, but for 2 or 3 hours a day. And I suppose extreme. But my life, I had some boyfriends, some not so good boyfriends, and I had some not so good relationships, deep ones. And I always my mum always used to say to me, why do you pick the lame ducks? It's an awful thing to say. But I did. I was sort of drawn to men that were, I don't know, different. And when I met Mike, my husband, he was very different. He was very nice, very kind, and I fell very much in love with him. We had our daughter and we had a son. Drinking had not, and I can honestly say this, I might have had a drink at Christmas. I might have had a drink. I was trying to think if I ever drank when I was young. And the only drink I had was a baby sham at Christmas. And somebody reminded me of that the other day in a meeting. And my mum used to have those baby sham glasses with the little Bambi on them. But I mean, that wasn't at a young age. I would be probably 14, 15, 16, and one baby sham at Christmas. So, you know, I think that my extreme sort of behaviours and my overthinking were triggers for, and they were building up. But when I got married, I just thought, this is it. We had a life, and then Mike lost his job, and his job came with our home, and I'm a worker. I am a very, very hard worker. And he went into sort of I suppose a depression. And I worked in a hotel in Bath, and I worked about 60 hours a week. And I have to say, it was all my money that saved up the deposit on a house for us to get a house. And we did. We got a house, and he also got a new job. And I'll skip on a bit, but getting this new job was, you know, such a relief in many ways, because I could ease back. And by then I'd got 2 little children, so I was working like a Trojan, and I felt sort of responsible, I suppose. And I didn't want us to, you know, my home has always been important to me, always, or a home. So what happened? He had this new job, and I just had a feeling something was going on. Something was amiss. He was nowhere near attentive as he used to be. He was coming in late, the usual. And sadly, my dad was diagnosed with a cerebral brain tumour. And this was on December the 17th, 1983. And I remember thinking to myself, Mike won't go out tonight, even though it was his work's Christmas do. I'd convinced myself that he wouldn't go, he'd stay with me after hearing that news. And he went out, and I knew that he'd gone out, and I knew he might not be back that night. And that was very hurtful. This was before I'd made the phone call to my sister, well, my mum, but my sister-in-law actually told me what the prognosis was for my father, and he'd got 3 months to live. So I came back into the house that night, and I can remember this night, and that was the first time I drank because of my feelings. And I had some brandy, and I drank it. Anyway, to cut a very long story short, Mike actually left me, and he left me and the children. And as odd as this seems, he moved in with the lady he was having the affair with and her husband, who didn't know anything about this affair. It was a crazy, crazy situation. And during that period he'd gone, I drank. I picked up these boxes from the supermarket and I used to drink. And I used to drink because when those children were in bed, I knew that I wouldn't be able to sleep. So I drank to help me sleep. I drank to escape my feelings. And I found that it was very soothing to do that. And again, I was on my own for about 9 weeks. And during that period of time, my drinking had changed. And then Mike decided that he was going to come back. One night, I was just woken by this, what I felt a presence somewhere in the room, and it was just him. And he'd just arrived back home. And we did try and reunite. My mum and dad were so lovely. They tried to help us. We had a holiday, but by then my drinking had changed. I had changed. I was so revengeful, and I was out to get this woman, believe you me. And I was really out to get this woman. And I made Mike go to their house, and tell her husband, because he still didn't know. And so that it would ruin their marriage. And he said, that was my ploy. I said, you either stay and you tell, his name is Simon, I'll never forget his name. You would tell Simon what you've been doing, why should I be suffering, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, he did. And I don't know what happened to their marriage, whether they survived or they didn't. But my marriage didn't. I could not stay with Mike. And I left, and I had every intention of finding somewhere to live and bringing the children with me, finding somewhere else, because he wouldn't leave the house. He was back in that house and just would not leave it. So I left. And when I actually moved 9 times in that year, I didn't ever get my children back to live with me. In that year, my drinking had prior to that and during that period, my drinking just escalated to the next level. And I was mixing with people that drank like I did. I was mixing with people that didn't have any responsibilities. And I hate to say this, in the end, it was the court that decided who had custody and care and control of my children, because I was so irresponsible and I was such a unreliable source and mother to look after 2 little children that Mike really did have to step in and deal with it in a way that I never ever thought he would. And I can remember going to my solicitor drunk. I can't remember what was said, but I can remember I went there drunk. And I can remember he said to me, "This is why you're in such trouble." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "You're drunk." And I defended, I said, "I'm not drunk." My drinking, I defended above everything and everybody else, including my children. And of course, that just set the fuse alight, because I ended up, I think it was that night or the night after that, after the court had given their decision, at my old house, breaking every window. My poor children were in the house with my ex-husband, or my husband, and he had to have me arrested in front of them. And, you know, when I look back at that behaviour and that absolutely alcohol-driven rage, anger, revenge, I don't know what I'd have done if I'd have got into that house. I really don't. I was so out of control. They were so scared. And that's just one of the incidents. I had a number of those incidents. And I'm ashamed to say that, obviously. But I'm not alone in this fellowship, because I've heard other people having those awful incidents where they are just powerless. You know, I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that I'm an alcoholic. Nobody in their right mind, with a drink, without a drink, would have behaved like me. And I had to look at, well, I didn't. Everybody else looked at my behaviour, and I actually went to some AA meetings then. And I remember sitting in these meetings, I think I went probably to 5 or 7 meetings. And I went simply because everybody told me that I needed to go to an AA meeting. And my sister-in-law's brother, if you can work that one out, took me. He was sober at the time. But I went to these meetings and I thought, just that, I'm not that bad. This is after losing my children. I'm not that bad. I'm just not like these people. I have no identification at all. And it took me another 10 years, almost 10 years, to get back to a meeting. And oh, flipping heck, what happened in those 10 years? My drinking just continued. Anything that I could get hold of as well to take with my drinking, I would, so that I could drink more and stay up later. If I forgot my contraceptive pill, I'd take 5, just in case. You know, everything was extreme. Everything was just so chaotic. And yet, there I was running a business with this guy, and in the end, that became such a shambles. He had to draw a line under it quick. And then I thought, well, I'll start my own business. And I did. I started my own business. I met somebody else who's my husband now. And, you know, we've been together a long while. And I started this business. And it just went, it was so successful. And it was crazy, really, in this 10-year gap, as I call it. How could I have possibly done that? But of course, ultimately, it came crashing down. When I eventually had had enough, I'd had 2 more little boys. My 2 older children were teenagers. And I thought by having 2 more children, that would fix me. I could try again, I could start again, but no, it didn't fix me. And on that November day, I mean, I could go on and on and on about the consequences of my drinking. There were lots of them. But I'd like to talk more about what's happened in my recovery. in this time I have, because for me, that's where I am today. On that November morning, I came downstairs and I'd got my business, which was then in a total shambles. I'd got the bailiffs knocking. I'd stolen money because I ran a client's account in my business. I was in big trouble, big trouble. I was borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, and then suddenly, oh my God, I couldn't pay Paul. And I'd got my clients coming in, demanding their money. I'd be under the desk hiding. And the poor lady that was working for me, oh God, how she put up with it, I don't know. How she put up with me, I don't know. And in the end, on that morning, I came downstairs after the strangest thing happened to me. That year before I stopped drinking, there were incidents. I call them chinks in my armour. The lady that used to work for me, she won this holiday at one of these big static caravan sites in Cornwall. And she asked me to go with her. She'd got 2 little boys, the same age as my little boys. And I went with her, and she had decided to go home, put her boys to bed. Of course, I was in the clubhouse with my little boy, one of them a toddler, the other in the pushchair. I hadn't had enough. And I remember not being able to find my way back to where we were staying, in rows and rows of these caravans. I hadn't even noted the number. And in the end, this security guy had to come and help me. And again, I was so drunk, in charge of my 2 little boys. And I remember that. I don't remember the details, but I remember the feeling. I felt so shameful. For once, I felt shame, and a genuine feeling of shame. And there were a number of things that happened. I gave up my dog. I used to have a beautiful Gordon setter. I'm a real dog lover. And I gave him away. I organised him to go to the Gordon rescue place, because I knew that I couldn't cope with it. And again, that was a responsible thing to do. And that morning, the house was quiet. My husband was doing an access course at the university, at the college, to get to university. And normally I'd have gone down and found my stash and drank. But this morning, on the 14th, I ran, I don't know if it was a bath or a shower. I can remember that mirror so clearly. It was a white mirror on my windowsill that went like this, and it was sort of arch shaped. And it was condensated, and I wiped the condensation away that morning, and I looked at myself in that mirror. And I got so close to that mirror because I didn't recognize who was looking back at me. And I cried real tears. And I went downstairs and I opened the yellow pages and I called AA, and I spoke to a lady, and she told me where the meeting was that day or that evening. And excuse me, I didn't dare go out, and I didn't drink when I got to that meeting. Excuse me. And little did I know that that meeting that day would change my life. There was a circle of people And I sat right at the very corner by the door. And it was, I can remember there was a guy showering in a pinstripe suit. And I walked home from that meeting and I went into the Francis Hotel opposite, which is very close to the meeting. And I had a Coke. And then I walked down by the river and I had a Who Me little envelope that they'd given me. And you know, that day, not a single soul apart from that lady knew that I might go to a meeting. My life had become so, small, so alone. I couldn't tell another living soul. I couldn't tell my mum, I couldn't tell any friends that I was off to an AA meeting. And I never ever wanted that feeling to come back again. That was the feeling that I kept drinking on, that aloneness. And that's not being able to reach out and tell somebody who I really am. And the following day, I went to the Tuesday lunchtime meeting. Here in Bath, we've always been very lucky with meetings, and there's been a lot of them. And again, I don't know if I admire people who get sober, either on Zoom or where there's less help. And I heard a lady share in that meeting. She'd had her children adopted and she was sharing about her children. And for the first time, again, I felt this empathy when I was listening to her. I felt this shift in me. And she cried, and it made me want to cry. I wanted to cry. And I spoke to that lady after the meeting. And her name was Usha. She was an Indian lady. And she helped me so much in my early days. She really did. And it was suggested, we all know what the suggestions are, that I did 90 and 90. And I did a meeting every day for over a year because I was so frightened that I'd drink in between those meetings and get that feeling back. I was just listening. And you know, you talk about a spiritual awakening. I had one when I looked in that mirror, I've no doubt about that. And then something happened, and I can't recall how long I'd been coming, but it wasn't massively long. But I'd left a meeting one day and I felt so safe in this meeting. And I felt so full of hope. And that is intervention for me. And I can still feel hope and safe. I still do feel hope when I go to a meeting. And I still do feel safe. But I kept going. And I met these people and I used to think, crikey, how on earth will I know all these names? But you do. You get to know everybody. And my first service post was cleaning the ashtrays with a paintbrush, you know, to get all the ash out down in Abbey Green. And I felt so honoured to be able to do that, clear the ashtrays, clear them out, take them up. And then there was a guy up there called Gordon, and he was washing up. He used to do the washing up most weeks. And he wasn't a newcomer. And he'd wear his medallions, you know, his chips on his belt. And I think he's probably getting on for 40 years sober now, is Gordon. And we're good friends. I saw him at a meeting on Tuesday. You know, he's still around. So my life, God, I came from that horrible, horrible, lonely place. Well, not lonely because everybody was around me. I'd overlooked the fact that my dad died. My mum had to move away. She moved back to Derbyshire, mainly because of me. It was absolutely crippling her to see me killing myself. And of course, I thought she'd abandoned me and this, that, and the other. And oh. But when I came into these rooms, something definitely changed. It allowed me to slowly discover who I really am. And I'm still doing that today. In those early days, it was really hard because my youngest son was just 10 and a half months old when I came in. And I'd got a little toddler. My 2 teenage children were not in my life because their trust had gone. But I do have to say, my ex-husband, he never discouraged, he always encouraged a relationship. And I'm really grateful to him today. And I can honestly say that. From that enraged initial reaction, I think completely differently today. And he was able to do something that I could not. I could not be a mother at that time, where he was a fantastic father and continued to be. And we're great friends today. We are great friends. He's remarried, but before he remarried, he used to come and have his Christmas lunch with us, and so we'd all be together again. And my ex-husband, and you know, rather than taking it turns and him being on his own, you know, that's a very sort of grown-up and adult and healing thing, that we could all be together. And you know, my journey has been fantastic. I went bankrupt 7 months into my recovery, and people say, oh God, don't make any changes. And I know I'm not special and different, but I had to. If I'd have hung on to old ideas and thinking that I could survive bringing that business back to what it was, I would have probably drank again. And I was so scared because I'd got myself in such a pickle financially that I thought I was going to go to prison. Always at the back of my mind, I thought, Christ, I'm going to go to prison here. But I did. I declared myself bankrupt. And that allowed me to get well. And it allowed me to be a mum for a little while rather than being a working mum. And it allowed me all the space I needed to have friends round. My friends used to come and have coffee around my kitchen table. It was lovely. And I made a really special friend in my early recovery on my very first Friday meeting. And we just looked at one another, and there was something about her. I looked across the room and looked into her eyes, and she just smiled and I smiled back. And the following Friday, she wasn't there. And the following Friday, she was there, and she said she'd drank. She'd come out of treatment that first Friday, and she'd drank. So I was always 10 days older than her. And I lost that lovely friend last year. And that was really tough. She was 91, and she'd been she'd been by my side all that time. And although there was an age gap between us, it's funny, recovery doesn't see age, it doesn't see colour, it doesn't see religion, it just brings us together. And that was a big loss for me last year, losing her. But I'm so glad that I had her in my life, because had I not been sober and had she not stayed sober, we wouldn't have formed those friendships. And as I say, I think I've formed some fantastic, loving, beautiful friendships. So where did I go? I was bankrupt, and I went to, I didn't do anything for a few months, which was the first for me, a real first. And then in the February, the phone rang and somebody wanted me to help them. I do property management, and this person had heard about me by somebody else, because I was once very good at what I did. And they said, could I help them? They'd got these 50 flats that were in an absolute mess. So I was honest. I said, I don't think I can, because I'm bankrupt. And he was from London, so he's quite a, you know, a worldly gentleman. And he said, well, you could help me. You don't have to, you know, be a director or anything. And anyway, to cut a long story short, my husband and I, we set up, well, not me, my husband set up a company, and I worked under the company's umbrella, all legitimately, and we were able to help him. And we started a business again. And that was in 1996 in the March. And in 2003, we'd been able to pull ourselves back. We'd bought a house. We'd sold that house, sold the business, and we moved to Spain. And we lived there until 2008. And I share that because anyone that doesn't think they are capable of pulling themselves back, you can. And material things are nothing. But for me, it just happened that way, that we pulled ourselves back, and we ended up living our little dream in Spain, which was lovely. And while we were in Spain, something really weird happened. I had looked at some properties one day, and I knew that we lived very rurally, so meetings were sparse. So I did telephone duty over there, and the telephone rang this particular day, and it was a gentleman saying, you've got to help my wife. And I said, well, if she'll speak to me, which she did. I spoke to her, and she told me she was in such a state that, you know, she didn't know who or where to go. And I said, well, tell me where you are. I'm sure we can get somebody to you. And southern Spain is a big place, as probably you know. And she ended up in my village. She was in the same place as me. And if that isn't intervention, what isn't, you know, honestly. And I went to meet her, and she became she did for me. She used to say to me, I don't know what I'd do without you. I said, I don't know what I'd have done without you. We are still really close. And she's 21 years sober now. You know, it's just incredible how this program works through. And it works through when you least expect it. And that's happened time and time again. You know, with Anna, it was really weird. There was a connection there before we were even born. Anna's mum knew my husband's mum. They went to school together. I think it was 11 years old they've known one another. You know, this is before we were even part of one another's life. But Anna came to me in Spain, and because I knew Max, it's just extraordinary. But my journey, where's my journey been and where's it taken me? It's taken me to some wonderful places, and it's taken me to a place where I can truly call home. And I don't mean a house, I mean within. My illness was always me looking outside in, trying to fix things from the outside. It isn't like that today. My illness is from the inside out. Or have I got that the wrong way round? I probably have, haven't I? Yeah. I mean, my well-being, I cannot get from anything external. It has to be, I have to find it from within. And that means letting go of things that I thought were good for me, letting go of people I thought were good for me, and allowing myself to feel. I think that's been the biggest gift I've had, to be able to feel a feeling. And I remember in those early days not having a clue what I was feeling. And Anna and I would phone one another and we would explain how we were feeling. And one of us would try and put a name to it. And we really struggled sometimes because I had suppressed so many feelings. And of course, I had so much guilt. It took me a long time to face my guilt around my children. But you know, today, oh God, I have got such love in my life. And I've had to forgive myself. I've done a lot of work around forgiving myself. And as I heal, me remaining sober has definitely healed my family. And when my mum died, I was able to really care and love for my mum, love my mum. I gave her last shower, I put her clean nightie on, I brushed her hair. And I also did that for Philip's mum, my mother-in-law. And if I'd have been drinking, both those women have seen me at my worst. But I would like to think they've seen me when they need me most. I was present in their lives. And that is the biggest gift you can give to another human being. Just being present when somebody needs you. And no matter how small. I love my life. I love my family. I love my husband. He had two heart attacks last year and a triple bypass. And it absolutely threw me. But I didn't pick up a drink. I was present when he had his second heart attack. And I was able to do the right thing. Call 999. I was present when he came home to look after him. And that is a gift. A gift. And, I do service. I've done a lot of service through the years. And I've just done one of the best bits of service AA has given me. I did prison meetings for some time. I started years ago, and then I started again about 2 years ago. And we do a rotating prison meeting, so I'm rotating secretary. And they hadn't got a clue what the steps were. And it's a recovery wing. And I thought, God, how are they going to survive just on a meeting. They're not. So I do a workshop with them, and I had the privilege of 4 of them last time I was in doing their step 5 with me, and that was absolutely mind-blowing that they trusted me enough, and I felt honoured to be asked to do that, because I said they could put it aside if they wanted to. But no, they said they wanted to do it with me, so we did it. And I went in for 2 days. So 4 hours, 4 hours, 4 hours, 4 hours. And that probably has been, it's been a situation like with any service. It's might be good for them, but it's better for me because it's taken me right back to basics as well, doing this workshop with them. And I'm here tonight. My husband, I've got a son in recovery. He celebrated 10 years sobriety last Sunday. Our house was full of people. He said, "Mum, I think I'll have a little party." I said, "Oh, that'll be nice. Mum, could we have it at your house?" "Yes, he can." And he did. And he came in at 21. And that was a really difficult time because I didn't know how to handle him. And at times, I didn't drink, but my illness was rampant, trying to fix. I'd forgotten how to let go with love. I was so frightened that if I was to let go of him, he'd die. And I thought about my mum a lot. I thought about my mum, how she moved away. That took a lot of guts for my mum to move away and leave me, because my mum loved me and I loved my mum. But at the end of her life, that love was just so special. And she said to me when I laid on her bed, she said, "I've got Julie back." And she had. She'd got Julie back. And I don't care how you get into AA, where you come from, how you do it, our backgrounds, but something is so special about an alcoholic and our alcoholic friendships that we cannot survive without them. I cannot survive without going to meetings, being present, having these loving friendships. They're more than I ever thought possible. So today, and just for today, my husband's gone out. He said, "I'll leave you to it." He's taken our dog out for a walk. All my children are safe. I've got 4 grandchildren. They're all safe. And most of all, why is that? Because I'm safe. As my son says, he was brought up in the cradle of AA. And when I fell and fall, I fall into the cradle of AA. And thank God you're there and have helped catch me at times, because I have learned to tell you who I really am. So I have spoken a long while there, and I don't know how I've done it, but I've done it. I hope it wasn't all double Dutch, but thank you so much for listening to me tonight. It's probably just what I needed. Thank you.
Oh, it's an emotional one for me. I'm just going to share back briefly before I go into the sharing, if you don't mind. Julie's my sponsor, and I'm really proud of my sponsor tonight. Many of you who hear me on the morning meeting will hear me say, my sponsor always says, "Tell someone who you really are on a daily basis." And boy, thank you, Julie, for telling us who you've been over the last 30 years, but beyond that as well. And thank you for that phrase, because that saves me on a daily basis. Tell someone who you really are. Kathleen and I chatted before the meeting and we told each other who we really were. So powerful. And we ended up laughing at who we really are today. And we didn't feel like that before we spoke. We felt a bit twisted about who we really are today. So it was just brilliant. It works. And like Julie said, our lives were entwined before we were even born. But when I was in trouble with my drinking, my husband phoned Julie and I went up to her house in the village and she did what I now know is 12-step me. And she told me who she really had been, who she was that day and who she could be. And I thought she had shared with me what I had hidden all my life. And I kept hiding, but that day changed my life. I probably will come back in and share a bit later because there's lots for me to say, but Hazel is now going to read the promises. Over to you, Hazel, again.
Thank you. Step 9 promises. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we're halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We'll suddenly realise that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialise if we work for them. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Hazel. Now, thank yous. I'd like to thank Julie again. It was absolutely amazing to hear you. I'd like to thank the co-hosts who were helping along in the background. Timekeeper was Karen. Promises were Hazel. And the preamble was Kathy. Kathy's gone, but thank you, Kathy. And screen sharing. Anna done the screen sharing. I'd like to thank everyone for sharing back this evening. And Anna.
A reminder that this meeting is on 7 days per week at 8:30 UK time. We also have a lunchtime meeting every Sunday, 1 PM UK time. This is a step 11 meeting, meditation meeting.
And on Saturdays at 6 PM, we have the Old Timers meeting. It's an extended share recorded for the archives. And on Thursday evenings, we have a meeting at 7:30 UK time. We use the same meeting codes for all of our meetings.
Stick around for fellowship after the meeting. If you want to use a breakout room, please let the host know. Oh, I now need to share the yellow card. Just bear with me 1 second.
Who you see here?
Yeah, what you hear here.
When you leave here.
Let it stay here.
And we would like to invite Julie back in to lead us out with the Serenity Prayer, please. And I'll ask you to unmute, Julie.
Yep. Okay. Oh, well, thank you so much for inviting me. And it's been lovely, really lovely to see everybody and meet new friends. If you'd like to join me in the Serenity Prayer. God,
grant
Grant us serenity
to accept
the things we cannot change.
No wisdom to know the difference. Thank you so much, Julie.
God bless all.
Thank you.